Uganda at 60, definitely it is a bright Sunday, and thank you for joining us once again. This is Smart 24 TV, where we dedicate ourselves to driving business. My name is Fred Makubuya, and definitely as a country, today we celebrate 60 years of independence. A lot has been achieved, and definitely I must say the number of challenges this country has gone through. And of course we'll be weighing into those different challenges that have hindered us from progress. And of course this time around, Uganda celebrates 60 years of independence at a time when the economy is going through a number of trials and tribulations, if I can call it that way. And one of it, of course, is escalating prices. The inflation has gone high, and of course this has become the topic of discussion everywhere. Like we say, our dedication is to drive a business, and we'll be making a 360-degree coverage of where the economy has come from, where are we, and where are we headed. Of course, that is where our discussion basically is going to stem. The theme of today's independence is Declaration of African Independence and Our Shared Destiny. I beg your pardon, the theme for the 60th independence is about Declaration of African Independence and Our Shared Destiny. When we talk about independence, we are looking at the social, we are looking at the economics, we are looking at the politics. And because, of course, as a business channel, our emphasis will basically rotate on the economy of Uganda. And I must say we'll be giving you a live coverage right from Kololo, where the function is going to take place. A number of heads of states have already arrived in this country. What does this mean to Uganda as a country? What does this mean when it comes to matters of the East African community? And what does this mean to you and I as a member of Uganda as a country? And of course, I am joined by Mr. Kapwepwe Julius. He's the head of programs at the Uganda Date Network. Of course, he'll be giving us his insight about where we've come from and where are we headed. Mr. Kapwepwe Julius, it's a Sunday. Thank you for joining us once again as we make sense of the 60 years of independence to a country called Uganda.
My pleasure. I thank the living God. I thought he lives up there.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't live there. He's with us.
He's omnipotent and omnipresent. I thank the living God that this far he has brought us as a people, you and I, as a people, Ugandans, as a people, the Africans, you know, from doldrums of challenges as you highlighted earlier on, but also ushering us into a time when we have all these massive opportunities as the Ugandan people, in this particular case, looking at what lies ahead in the next 20, 30, 40, 100 years.
Okay. And of course, later on, my colleagues will be joining us. I know Dr. Tindiewa will be joining us shortly in a while to also help us weigh in on what is happening when it comes to matters of economy. Joram Paulson will also be joining the team later on during the day. And of course, I must let you know we'll be giving a 360 degrees coverage on what will be happening today at Kololo Independence Ground, when His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni will be joined by a team of presidents from the countries that make up East African community. What does this mean? Mr. Julius, you began with a very, I call it a Christian statement, which says, we thank God for this far.
It's biblical, not necessarily Christian.
It is biblical. Do you have reason to say, even as a country, we thank God that we have come this far?
Yes. Many are since gone, many are dead. A number of countries are no longer on the face of the earth. If you, even within the African continent, if you looked for a country that was called Sudan, you know, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, you will not find it. There is a whole reconfiguration. Uganda, since 1926, when kind of we are formally put into an outfit that we have today, will remain a steadfast country. If you looked for Bosnia-Herzegovina, you remember those days of some of those countries, you cannot get them on the face of the earth today. So that the Lord has brought us this far as the African people in some of the cases, but also as Ugandans in particular, moreover up to 60, and we are still living and looking ahead is something, as a matter of fact, we have to praise him for, challenges notwithstanding.
And definitely, this being a Sunday, I must say, when Mr. Kapepe begins by saying, this far the Lord has brought us, it's important that for the last 2 years, 2019, 2020, have been serious years. The country has lost a number of important people. I am not saying that there are people that don't matter in this country, but we must agree that the country, Uganda, has lost a number of people, executive directors, ministers, definitely presidents, and many of them. So, as we celebrate 60 years of independence, I know there are people that say there are no reasons why we should.
Yes.
But given the times that we've lost some people and you and I are still alive, I think we have many reasons as why we should say thank you, God, for a country called Uganda. To kickstart, of course, the heads of state have come, many of them in number. First and foremost, what does this mean to have a function like this and you have the heads of state arriving a day before?
First of all, having the heads of state aboard is a demonstration of vote of confidence in the head of state that has invited them. In this particular case, His Excellency President Museveni. That's a vote of confidence.
Sure.
Yes, otherwise they don't turn up, first and foremost. The second one is that as Africans, we are building that camaraderie, that comradeship of making effort to having a sports club villa-like to push into the same goalpost. To have the Uganda Cranes kind of team like to build to push into the same goalpost. So coming here is not just for political gimmicking and the many speeches and dancing amagunju and dancing chitagoro. It is also to look at, as the Great Lakes region, for instance, as COMESA, as West Africa, if you talk about the case of Mali, Burkina Faso, and many of these countries whose representation we are going to have, it is to discuss how do we take the African journey forward. If you are a representative of Mozambique, it is not just come and sit in Kololo and have nice weather in Uganda. That is important too. But also to discuss the whole economic spectrum. If in the case of, for instance, Great Lakes region, we have had security issues. At a time like this one, when heads of state are gathered together, becomes a time to reflect and to strategize. If we do not deal with the insecurity, for instance, raised by a number of groupings, if we took Democratic Republic case as an example, your economics cannot happen. You remember Uganda is making effort to putting up a one-stop business center, for instance, in the Arbatine area around Lake Mwitanzije, which some of you call Lake Arbat, to build a one business center at Goli in the Panyimur areas, but also in Toroko in the case of the Bundibujo areas, so that business people, businessmen and women can spend lesser time, can be inconvenienced lesser to be able to get into the Ugandan market on the Kenya, or in the case of the DR citizens, but also Ugandans into the market on the other side, across the so-called international border. That's a huge opportunity when heads of state are around to have discussion, reflect how far are we, how much more do we need to go. Already,
there's being present but not available. In that sense, I mean.
Present and available. In other words, they're coming to celebrate in Kololo alongside our head of state, alongside Ugandans, doesn't just stop there at having lunch and flying back. It is also an opportunity to meet and be able to reflect on key strategic areas of trade, of business, of infrastructure interconnectivity, across the region, across a lake like Naruvare, where a number of projects are coming up, infrastructural projects to be able to facilitate trade and development in this part of the world. So that becomes an opportunity. If we have an oil pipeline, East African crude oil pipeline that is having issues.
Maybe those are issues we are going to digest further.
Then they come and have a discussion against the wind that has come. How do we move ahead? So it is such a big opportunity, but it is also a time when, as Ugandan people, we are able to demonstrate our hospitality, when we are able to market. We are now, right now, as we speak, like you said, later on you'll be focusing onto the function at Kololo. So is the rest of the world doing. And so through that we are able to project the good that we have for tourism, for business, for investment, and for the good African people that we are.
Maybe let me throw the same question to our dear esteemed viewers. The presence of heads of state, what does this mean to you and I? You can give us your opinion. Go to our social media platform, Smart24 TV, our Twitter handle, on YouTube, and then give us your opinion on what you think the presence of the different heads of state, what does this mean on matters of economics of this country? But also, most importantly, what does it add on the economy of Uganda? Go to our social media platform, Smart24 TV, Twitter handle, and YouTube, and definitely give us your opinion, and we'll be responding to that and more. And of course, Mr. Kapwepwe, of course we'll have time to digest more on what Uganda means at 60 years of independence. This is the theme of the day: Declaration of African Independence and Our Shared Destiny. I know my colleagues will come in to digest a number of things, but I would want us to throw more light on the theme, because that is what gathers us today at Kololo. Declaration of African Independence and Our Shared Destiny. We have three important words: the African interdependence and shared responsibility. What does this theme, what sense do we see in this theme?
I'll quickly give you a very brief background. For instance, if you looked at heads of state that have arrived and others who may not physically come, but come through their representatives. Let's take an example of Burundi. Burundi got independence on the 1st of July 1962, just 2 months before Uganda. Uganda in October, but Burundi in July, 2 months earlier. If you looked at a country like Tanzania, it was December 1961 in the case of. If you looked at a country like Kenya, it was also December. You know, there is something interesting about December, that period, October, December, 1963. And if you looked at a country like Mali, that was September 1960. If you looked at a country like Mozambique, that was September 1964. So the shared core and cause into independence also falls around the same time bracket. That's very important.
Where is the significance in the period? October, November, December, especially to East African countries.
Yes,
most of the African countries.
More so across the years. We may not go into the specifics of the dates. This one was 7th, the other one was 9th. But around that period, we need to record that there were African struggles for independence. And through sustained pressure, of course, and other economic considerations of Europe and the Americas, then around the same time we seem to achieve our independence. But that independence came by blood. It was not given on a silver platter. So to say, we need to reflect on this for where we've come from, and shared prosperity is in order. The other bit, of course, like we said, is for the economics. You no longer can live in this global regime as an independent country, even you at individual level. While you are a media, as we would say in Uganda, kafuruhia, a guru in the media spectrum, you need the data out there. You need a Baba man and Baba woman out there for. Otherwise, your hair will be terrible.
To make you handsome or beautiful.
You need the manufacturer of a certain cosmetic. You need. So do Africa. So do nations. You cannot trade amongst yourself as the country within yourself, and you think that that is sufficient. It is no longer the case. If we took an example of Uganda, if you looked at our productive and productivity capacities today, whether of cement, whether of beer, of mattresses, name it, of sugar, you no longer can. In the case of sugar, for instance, we are now producing with about 30 sugar milling companies. We are producing about 650 million tons annually. But Uganda the domestic market can only consume less than half of that. So as a matter of fact, you need Ndaishimie of Burundi to have a discussion around the deficit, sugar deficit that he has on his side. How can we come in, make money, but also make sure there is no shortage on the side of the Burundian economy? It is that simple. So shared destiny, that you can no longer work alone. You could make an attempt, but it is better and faster for prosperity, for development, when you work with the others. If you have Mombasa Port, as an example, that until yesterday would be over-congested, your goods and services for goods destined, say, to Uganda, to get here would take about 3 weeks, some 20 years ago. Today, it just takes 4 days. So even then, there is a level of congestion at Mombasa Port. So a Mtwara port that comes up in Tanzania, at Tanga, at Dar es Salaam, or even the Kenyan new port at Lamu that comes up, is necessarily of importance to Uganda. Therefore, having the leaders to have those kinds of conversations. How do we harmonize, of Kismayu on the Somalian part, how do we harmonize these opportunities to be able to advance our African economies, increase our GDPs, create employment for our people, create safety and security for our facilities, is in order to come and discuss the shared prosperity as is going to happen and has already been happening in Uganda.
I must say we'll be giving you a 360 degrees coverage on what will be happening today at Kololo Independence Ground when Uganda will be celebrating 60 years of independence. I must also acknowledge that a number of heads of states have already arrived in this country. Some of them arrived yesterday, and given the communication that is just coming in, of course, several other teams from across the world are joining us to celebrate the 60 years of independence. What do you make of the 60 years of independence? It's important. You can join us and give us your opinion on our social media platforms, Smart24 TV, Twitter handle, and YouTube. And Mr. Kapepe Julius is the Director of Programs at Uganda Date Network. Is it a fallacy for some countries, or is it a wrong thinking for some nations to think that they can do without other countries?
I have not come across such a country in my few years on earth. I don't even think that for the other years remaining, I'll ever see such a country. While, for instance, the United States or China, arguably one of them is the biggest economy in this world, the raw materials come from Africa. In fact, in the case of the United States, as an example, the raw material came from Africa and other parts of the world through conquest. The riding over of our own people into slavery to go and work in the sugar plantations in Latin America and North America, upon which the U.S. prosperity stands. At least there is an account of that African contribution to that extent. If you looked at a country like China, the raw materials used in many of their prosperity, the manufacturing, the modernity that we are seeing, the uranium, the cobalt, the coffee from African soil, from Uganda, from DRC, from Mozambique, from West Africa. So, but also, if you looked at a country like Japan, very good at making Isuzu vehicles and Toyota vehicles and many other brands. But the Japan market alone is not sufficient. So the embassy in Uganda, the embassy in Tanzania, the embassy across the board, to be able to, for business purposes, to be able to have products of Mitsubishi products from Yokohama on the other side in Japan onto the African soil and making money. So the interdependence is only inevitable. It is not a question of discussion. Perhaps the question of discussion would be, how do we improve that interdependence? How do we ensure that a country like Uganda, for instance, is not just losing its money through multiple imports, and it doesn't have so much to put into the other one's market. If you looked at, and we are glad that at 60, that realization came some time back, and that realization has actually contributed to Uganda's advancement. Even if we took maybe the pharmaceutical industry, the medical products, subsector, even as a component, Uganda, while we are losing over $300 million annually, through imports of basics like gloves, gloves, hand gloves. Now we can manufacture our own. Now we can talk about Abacus Pharmaceuticals. Now we can talk about Reni Industries. We can talk about Kampala Pharmaceutical Industries and many others that have enabled us to do import substitution. So even when we are doing the quality chemicals, even when we are doing our own manufacturing now, you still need Rwanda as a market outlet. You still need Republic of South Sudan as a market. You still need Chad. So the level of stability, political, economic, social advancement in Central African Republic is necessarily of interest to you here in Kampala, you in Karamoja, you in Mitiana, in Usimbi, you in Namtamba, you in Sese Island, you in Chijezi. Why? Because your product is not going to be wholly consumed here, but you need an outlet in the neighborhood. If the neighborhood is stable, then we can talk about improving relationships and interdependence. If it is not stable, you still have an adverse spillover effect. And in the case of Uganda, for instance, even at 60, gladly now we are an island of peace. So you have refugees, whether in Rwamwanja, in the Kamwenge areas, or in Bidibidi, in the case of northern Uganda, from all over the region. You have refugees from Democratic Republic of Congo. You are a host. Uganda, you no longer have refugees on the other side, as it was the case some 40 years ago. Rather, you are now a safe haven. Refugees from DRC, from Ethiopia, from Burundi, from Rwanda, all these neighboring places, from Somalia, are now seeking refugee here. So if you are not interested in that shared movement, that shared visioning, that you will continue to have an adverse effect because of the certain acts of your neighbor as we are hosting refugees. You think we'd love to host refugees because they are consuming into part of our own domestic resources. Whether you have European Union supporting you financially, definitely the European Union, it is not European Union's land that these refugees are being hosted onto. But that means that land is foregone by a resident community of the Ugandan citizens. So the shared prosperity and thinking through is in order so that we can have order and capacity locally, but also have order and capacity regionally and eventually as the African continent.
Maybe that is where the discussion will have to continue. Those watching us from DSTV and GoTV, of course, globally, Uganda is celebrating 60 years of independence, and I must confirm that a number of heads of states have already arrived into this country, of course, to join us as we celebrate 60 years of independence. I must acknowledge that many of us who are never here, of course, right at the initiation process, a lot has been achieved, but I also must say there's been a number of challenges. This celebration comes at a time when Uganda is grappling with a number of issues regarding the economy of Uganda. But I know Mr. Kapweepwe Julius is a director in charge of programs at Uganda Debt Network. That is where the center of discussion will basically have to rotate. I must reconfirm to you that our theme for today, as Uganda celebrates 60 years of independence, is Declaration of African Interdependence and Our Shared Destiny. I must repeat this, definitely because of its significance, that the Declaration of African Interdependence and Our Shared Destiny. Now, I must let you know that that is where our discussion will have to rotate. We are going to go for a very short commercial break. And of course, after here, my senior colleague as well will join us, Dr. Tindiewa. He's good at policy. Of course, we will be continuing the discussion with Mr. Kapweepwe Julius regarding where we've come from, where we are, and where are we headed. And of course, later on in the course of the day, I'll be coming back with Mr. Clark Chisembo. We'll be making a post-analysis of how the event will be. We are going to go for a very short commercial break. When we return, of course, I had an opportunity to meet the commissioner in charge of customs at Uganda Revenue Authority. We had a discussion regarding matters of Uganda at 60. And after that, Dr. Tindiewa will be sparking off the discussion of Uganda's independence at 60 years.